Hi everybody, today we're visiting the Hawn's Mill historic site, the site of the Hawn's Mill Massacre, and this is in Caldwell County. You'll remember that Caldwell County was created for the Saints to settle after being driven out of Jackson County and Clay County. Far west was the county seat, and that's where the temple was going to be built. Not all the Saints went to far west. There were settlements throughout the county, and then up into Daviess County, notably Adamonte-Amon. But Hawn's Mill was one of these settlements, and before you go into the site, you have this historic marker. This is an older one. At the bottom it says 1941. Southwest of here, on October 30th, 1838, occurred the incident generally known as the Hawn's Mill Massacre. This site, located by, I guess that's William R. Pemberton. This marker placed here by Glenn M. Setzer. And then it has a stone next to it. I don't really know anything about this stone, but I wonder if this was a millstone. But what I know for sure is north of here, in a town called Breckenridge, which I think is about maybe 20 minutes from here or so, north. They have a millstone there that's reportedly from Hawn's Mill. So they have it in the city park. There's also a memorial there, and I have a couple of videos where we visited that site. So if you ever come here to Missouri, it'd probably be a good idea to see all the sites that are in Caldwell County on the same day. Although here in the parking lot it says no camping, no overnight parking, no open fires. But other than that, you can see you can just visit this anytime. And the only thing to really see is the site itself, and then the marker that we just read. And then of course you can feel the spirit here. I was doing a little bit of research about when this site was purchased by the church back in 2012. It said that it was part of, I wish I had read that better. I just had my wife read it to me, but it was something to the effect that the church bought Hawn's Mill along with some other properties, one of them being a burial site at far west. And it may be the same one that we visited when we tracked down the location of the birth site of Joseph F. Smith. If you've been to far west, it has a sign there that points out that he was born, I think it's like a mile west of the far west temple site. And when you research that site, like in Sacred Places, Missouri, it points out that across the street from where he was born was the far west cemetery. There aren't any headstones or anything like that, but in 2004, when the book was published, at least at that time, it was owned by Community of Christ. But what I just read seems to suggest that that property may be owned by the church now, but I'm not sure. If it is owned by the church, it's not obvious. There aren't any signs or anything like that. It's being used as farmland, unless there is some other burial site other than there. I don't know. But here's Hawn's Mill. I had something I wanted to read. So I found this quote, or at least part of it, in Sacred Places, Missouri. But I went to the primary source. Well, I guess it's not the primary source, but no, yeah, I guess it actually would be. This is a book written by Bishop John D. Lee called Mormonism Unveiled: The Life and Confessions of the Late Mormon Bishop. So I don't know much about John D. Lee, but he was a bishop in the church. Later on in life, he was excommunicated. I don't know his whole story, but it seems like by the time that he died, he was excommunicated and not a member of the church. But he wrote down all of his memories, and I guess he had some grievances with the church, but he also left behind some valuable information about different locations like Hawn's Mill. And so this is what it says in his book. There was a settlement on Log Creek. Now, really quick, I don't know if this is what it was called before. If it was, now it's known as Shoal Creek, but I think it's the same thing. So there was a settlement on Log Creek between 3 and 5 miles east from Far West. It was quite a rich settlement. A man named Hawn had just completed a good flouring mill on the creek. The morning after the Battle of Crooked River, Hawn came to Far West to consult with the prophet concerning the policy of the removal of the settlers on Log Creek to the fortified camps. By the way, it should be pointed out, I checked this on the church website. Jacob Hawn was not a member of the church, but he was friendly to the saints. Okay. Colonel White and myself were standing when the prophet said to him, "Move in by all means if you wish to save your lives." So in other words, yeah, please leave Hawn's Mill, come to Far West or somewhere where it's safe if you want to save your lives. Hawn replied that if the settlers left their homes and all of their property, if the settlers left their homes, all of their property would be lost, and the Gentiles would burn their houses and other buildings. The prophet said, "You had much better lose your property than your lives. One can be replaced, the other cannot be restored. But there is no need of your losing either, if you will only do as you are commanded." Hawn said that he considered the best plan was for all the settlers to move into and around the mill and use the blacksmith shop and other buildings as a fort in case of attack. In this way, he thought he would be perfectly safe. Quote, "You are at liberty to do so if you think best," said the prophet. Hawn then departed, well satisfied that he had carried his point. The prophet turned to Colonel White and said, "That man did not come to counsel, but to induce me to tell him to do as he pleased, which I did. Had I commanded them to move here and leave their property, they would have called me a tyrant. I wish they were here for their own safety. I am confident that he will soon learn that they have been butchered in a fearful manner." So I did some more research. Hawn came back here, and it's unclear what he told the saints, if he told them what Joseph Smith said, that the prophet did counsel them to come to Far West, or if he didn't tell them. So, but either way, there's a lesson from this, even though Jacob Hawn was not a member of the church, and the lesson is to follow the prophet. That he knows when there's danger, both temporal and spiritual, and it's important to follow the prophet. It'd be interesting to find out if there were any members of the church that knew that Joseph Smith gave that counsel and they chose to ignore it. I think we already passed, yeah, the bend in the river. excuse me, let's go ahead and go back. Also, from what I've read, the mill was like at the bend in the river, which I believe is in this area. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot known about where all the original structures were, but if it was like exactly at the bend in the river, then it would be about right here. This is where it starts to curve around. It's interesting because as I visit these sites, I'm starting to form a timeline in my head of how everything happened. In October 30th of 1838, that was the day before Joseph Smith was arrested at Far West. Specifically the hill that's just a little bit south of Far West called the Eminence. So I didn't know that the Hawn's Mill Massacre took place so close to the arrest of Joseph Smith. This area right here is usually, well, at least every time that I came here earlier this year, this area had water, like, you know, going from about right here and a little ways that way. But now it's all dried up. I've talked to the missionaries here before, and they said, I think it was earlier this year. Dang, I can't remember when it was exactly. But I think it was around the time that we moved to Independence, so around February or March. They said that this whole area was flooded, like all the way to the dirt road. They showed me some pictures, and the water level was actually, it almost like, if I remember right, it was almost to the top of the fence line. It was like, it was pretty deep. And then you just have this wide open area right here. I'm not sure if it was like cleared out on purpose, you know, before the church owned it. Was this used as like a farm field? And maybe that's why it's all cleared out. All these trees over here, you can tell that they're mature. So I don't know. If you know more about it, let me know in the comments section. I do appreciate all your comments, and some people have sent me emails, and it's going to take me time to go through the emails. But already I found one email that pointed me to yet another church that's part of the restoration movement, or whatever you want to call it, that's headquartered in Independence, Missouri. So that video will be up soon, probably after this one, or maybe in a couple days, I'm not sure. But we're gonna go check that out. But please feel free to send me any information that you have that I can share on the channel. Now, you know, this is what I think is going to happen. I think at some point, whether it's before the second coming or in the millennium, I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that there will probably be a temple built here. I would not be surprised. It kind of makes me think of Palmyra and the Sacred Grove, and how the church built a temple in Palmyra. It even kind of makes me think of the Kansas City temple, which is not too far from Liberty, in the Liberty jail. I don't know if they did that on purpose. Of course, wherever temples are built, it's done by inspiration. But just the fact that it's so close to Liberty, I have to wonder if, you know, the history of that area was a factor in the selection of that location. The Kansas City Temple is technically within Kansas City limits. But anyway, I feel like I've seen other examples. I can't think of any right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the future there is a temple that's built here. But of course, we'd have to have more members of the church in this area. And I tend to think that the far west temple would probably be built first, simply because the cornerstones are there. They went as far as to lay the cornerstones. And even though the Hawn's Mill area is sacred and holy because of what happened here, I think far west probably would take precedence, just because the Lord said that that was a holy and consecrated land. We know that far west is where Cain killed Abel. That's where the name of the church was revealed. The law of tithing. It was headquarters of the church for a time. It's the first place that the church was all together in one location. So, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, there'd have to be something done about the flooding. I don't know if it could be built like right here, or maybe in the future, if like, I don't know if the church owns the other side of the road, but maybe if it doesn't right now, maybe it would purchase it and build a temple there in the future. But again, I think that'd probably be a ways down the road. So let's just go ahead and walk back toward the parking lot. So I'm trying to think of all the places here in Caldwell County that you can visit. Of course, you have the far west temple site. Just a little bit north of the temple site on the same highway is the Far West Historical Society and store. And on their property, they have the Elder Charles C. Rich cabin, the only remaining structure from the Far West period. And Elder Charles C. Rich was an apostle. And then they have a statue next to the cabin that was unveiled at the dedication earlier this year. I have video of that if you want to go see it. And then south of Far West, you have the Eminence, which is the hill where Joseph Smith and other church leaders were arrested. We talked about the birth site of Joseph F. Smith. There's nothing to see there, but I did put it on my map. The link for my map and my spreadsheet is in the description box of each video. Okay, and then you have Hawn's Mill. And then we talked about Breckenridge, which is to the north. That's where one, or maybe the main millstone is. It was moved up there for some reason. It's in the city park. You also have Kingston, which that city became the county seat for Caldwell County after Far West was abandoned. There's a historical marker there at the county courthouse that talks about that fact. And then in the city cemetery is where John Whitmer is buried. You can visit his gravesite. He was the first church historian, and he was one of the 8 witnesses. And then, oh man, I've already forgotten. I think the Battle of Crooked River is in Caldwell County. It might be in Ray County, but I'd have to double check. And then there's another town that I think is in Caldwell County called Hamilton. And I haven't gone there yet, but they have a historical marker. I think it just points out the fact that the saints were here in Caldwell County, and I don't think anything really significant happened in Hamilton, but I'm going to go there and investigate. Yeah, so just off the top of my head, those would be the sites to see while you're in Caldwell County. And I think you could easily visit all those sites in just one day. And you could probably include Davies County as well. You go to Adamondayaman, and then if you want to, go over to Gallatin, which was the site of the Election Day battle that led to the Mormon War, which includes the attack on Hawn's Mill. You could say that the Election Day battle or skirmish that happened in Gallatin led to what happened here, along with the extermination order in driving the Saints out of Missouri altogether. Yeah, so that's probably how I would do it. I would probably couple Davies County and Caldwell County together. And then, like, if you only have 2 days, I'd probably do those two in one day, and then do Jackson County, Clay County, and Ray County for the other day. So, okay, well, that's all that I have for this one. We'll come back here in the future as I do more research, collect more quotes and more facts. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you're able to come here yourself if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys later.